We're going to take a look at the rookies post NFL draft. We have been so excited, so much anticipation going into these 3 days. And now we're going to look at our first 2 rounds in a rookie mock draft. 12-team, Superflex, 3 wide receiver, just like we always like to talk about. How's it going, Matt?
Good, man. It was a great draft. I'm excited for our upcoming rookie draft and excited to be jumping into this. Now, do you want to start with evens or odds? What do you prefer?
I'll do odds, you do evens. I haven't gotten to pick Ashton Jeanty in anything we've done, so I will kick it off 101. Ashton Jeanty, that's been kind of locked in. We knew he was going to go high. It was great to see him get the high draft capital, 6th overall to the Raiders, wide open for him. They're going to feature him. They're going to use him in the passing game. I really think the landing spot was good. The player's amazing, and he's going to be the consensus 101.
In high school, he's a slot receiver before going full-time to running back. His senior year, he earned all-county honors. So it will be interesting to see how the Raiders utilize him, but really love the landing spot. Another landing spot I love at number 2 is Omarion Hampton with our Los Angeles Chargers. I had a few beers and was jumping up for joy when they made this pick. It's definitely what the heart wanted. And for fantasy purposes, I think it's going to be fantastic. Obviously, Najee's there on a 1-year deal. Najee is going to be tough to keep off the field. You know, he moves the chains, he doesn't fumble, he doesn't get injured, but I think long term this is kind of the perfect fit. I will say for redraft, maybe you're gonna have to be a little bit patient with him. We might see something similar to what Jahmyr Gibbs underwent, but I think this is kind of the locked and loaded 102 at this point.
Yeah, in Dynasty, the slow start shouldn't deter you whatsoever. Ideal landing spot. He got the draft capital. Don't overthink it. Hampton is the easy 102, even in Superflex in all formats. Going to 103, somebody whose value was in flux and I don't think changed for the better more than anybody else in this draft was Travis Hunter. And that's who I'm going to go with at 103. His draft spot was excellent. The fact that the Jaguars went up for him, new offensive coach with Liam Cohen there. They cleared house of all weapons behind Brian Thomas Jr. As much as I hate Trevor Lawrence, it's way better than whatever's going on in Cleveland. So, I love the stability. I love the new offense. They went out and got their guy too, so they're going to use him on offense. We don't have the answers yet, but I think the fact that they went up and got him and the fact that it's a new offensive head coach, there's no doubt that he's going to be used as a receiver. And I had at least doubt that he was even going to see the field that much as a receiver. So the fact that some of those concerns have been wiped away and the fact that he's in a much better offense than we were anticipating, I think kind of locks his value at 103.
And they didn't add any other wide receiver in the draft, and their only free agent wide receiver was De'Ami Brown. So I think, we're going to see him very heavily utilized. I'm very excited for him, very excited for Brian Thomas Jr. It was funny because I ran to the restroom just knowing that the Browns were on the clock. I was like, they're going to pick Hunter, whatever. And then all of a sudden I walked back and the trade had come in. I was like, oh my God, what is going on? They're going to go get him. So, I love it. I love the aggressiveness by the new coach and the new GM. So very excited to see him not have to be a Cleveland Brown.
Yeah. And there was that teardrop. There was that teardrop after 3 or even 4 with Will Campbell, depending on how you felt about him. So the fact that they went from 5 to 2, I think was a major deal in this draft specifically to go get one of the blue chip players. I really like the move. So anyways, that's why, we got Hunter, which is a big change from where we had been taking him like at 15 or 12, this is a huge deal for your dynasty drafts. And if you did your drafts already and got him later in the first round, you are jumping for joy. You are ecstatic.
Well, that's a really good point because a lot of teams that were sitting with the 111 or 112 that obviously have good teams that maybe have an opportunity to take a little bit more risk. Like if they did that before this happened, I mean, that's just the rich getting richer. But 104, this is a little tricky for me because I'm looking at Tet McMillan, I'm thinking Cam Ward, but I think my heart just wants to go TreVeyon Henderson here, man.
The heart wants what the heart wants, man. You love TreVeyon Henderson.
I love TreVeyon. I've been on record saying his freshman season, I was more high on him than Bijan. I've retracted that, but I just love Henderson, and I love this landing spot with the Patriots. And even though he might not profile as a typical workhorse, I'm truly confident that he can thrive in a Jahmyr Gibbs type role. I just think the world of him. The draft capital, says it on its own. They've invested in the offensive line as well, and I really think it's wheels up for TreVeyon.
Yeah, and this offense overall is trending up in a big way, right? So I know they signed
Hmm.
Ramondre Stevenson, but it's not like they're super overly committed to him or anything. The fact that they went out
Yeah.
early second round and locked in the running back, and there were other teams there that needed running back. So if they didn't want the player, they could have made a trade to allow the Bears to come up, to allow the Broncos to come up and get him, but they didn't. They
Yeah.
stuck, they picked, and I really think he's going to be featured in what should be a significantly ascending offense here.
Yeah, and one more point on him. What I love about him is he didn't fumble once over his 4 years, which is just unbelievable. And I was watching the Joel Klatt show a week ago or whatever before the draft, and he had Daniel Jeremiah on. And one of the best moments of the entire episode was when he asked DJ what the favorite trait of anyone he scouted in the entire draft. Joel had his written down, DJ had his top of mind, and they both said TreVeyon's pass protection, which to
Yeah.
me, those two guys I definitely look up to. And that's something that's going to keep him on the field on third down. He's going to have Drake May's trust. So just can't say enough good things about TreVeyon.
If you need a running back and you have the 103 and you miss out on the other two, like there's no shame in just picking TreVeyon. We both really like him. If that's the
Yeah.
position you're looking for, it's a very strong class here. And going up and getting your guy at the position, I think TreVeyon is every bit as capable of being successful in the NFL as Hampton or Jeanty. So you could get a starter at running back. It's not something that you should shy away from at 3 if you need the spot. Going down to 5 now, that kind of leaves it easy for me. I feel like I'm going to go with Cam Ward here. First overall pick, and there supposedly was a 2-horse race that turned out to absolutely not materialize. And it was such a shame, honestly, to have to sit there and listen up to Shedeur Sanders coverage for 5 straight rounds. Uh, it was a bad experience, in my opinion. I'm sure other people have similar things. I didn't even watch ESPN. Like it was just completely pathetic that ESPN missed Cam Ward's, kind
Yeah.
of moment there, right? And it was just like because they
Yeah.
were just talking all about Sanders and where he was going to go, and that was I understand the coverage because there was so much more mystery behind it, but anyways, I think Cam Ward's an excellent player. He's able to throw the ball down the field. He's able to move. He's probably not going to be a huge rusher, I don't think. Um, breaking down more and more and more of his tape and looking at more and more of his plays, it really is much more of a break the pocket, use your athleticism, keep your eyes downfield, or get your eyes back downfield and make throws. So, I did have issues with him bailing on clean pockets or bailing on plays a little bit too early, which is something that I think coaching can clean up and something that, the move to the NFL, hopefully he'll learn quickly that, if you get outside a little too quick, you're going to get hit hard. So, but I really like the player. I think the situation's good. And we'll get to Alec Aomanor a little bit later, who signed there. And I actually really like that fit personally. I know his draft was obviously very disappointing as well, but I do think Ward is in a pretty good position to succeed here. I think he can be a middling quarterback too, even as a rookie.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that makes the number 6 pick very easy for me. It's someone that I considered at pick 4, and that is Tet McMillan. Obviously, you and I really like Tet McMillan. Obviously, Carolina really likes Tet McMillan. I think there's a really opportunity with Carolina to become that number 1. So, no receiver on that team eclipsed 100 targets last year. Leggett led the way with 84. Thielen and Deontay would have, but Thielen only played 10 games, and obviously Deontay got traded. I will say my one hesitation with McMillan might be is he doesn't maybe command the amount of targets that we had hoped for. But I do love the player, and assuming Bryce Young continues to improve, like he's not someone I would even consider passing up on it at the 6th spot.
I love Tet as well, right? Big body receiver. Great, going to be a great fit with Bryce Young, I think. But earning targets is a thing in the NFL, and that's his one knock on his tape. One knock on him coming in is that is the separation there's the route running there, or is it more just leaning on his size? But I think his speed. He's got enough wiggle. And when you're 6'5", you can, or 6'4.5", whatever he measured at, he can really go up and win on jump balls, I think, in a unique way. So this, I think, is a tier break. Personally, with these 6 guys. Obviously, I'm going to take Quinshon Judkins at 107, and I think he's like in a mini tier of his own here at 7. If I had the 7th pick and somebody was in on Judkins, I would definitely try and move up one spot, even if I could, didn't have to give up a lot to get up there. But Quinshon Judkins, another guy, got early day 2 capital. He went to the Browns, which should be just wide open for him. They did add Dylan Sampson later, so that's an interesting dynamic, and they have Ford still in their running back room. So we'll see how it ends up playing out. But I expect Judkins to be the early down workhorse. I expect him to get mixed in quite a bit on passing downs as well. And he's somebody that I could see producing similarly to a David Montgomery, say, right? David Montgomery, even now, still has a role in the passing game, gets a lot of early down work, is going to work on the goal line. So, even though I think Judkins is a more talented, skilled player than and faster than David Montgomery, just think that kind of mold in terms of the role and the value that he can give you as year one.
Yeah, and I think from a real life perspective, I loved the Sampson pick. I really like him from a fantasy perspective. I was a little bit scared, but I think if you're envisioning a similar Monty to Gibbs type situation, I like that pick as well. And I think had Sampson not gone there, it would be a very clear tier of 7, which I still think it is a tier of 7, but I get the mini tier break. Now at 8, this is where things for me get very difficult. I've kind of gone back and forth quite a bit, and I think if I'm
this
just
is the pick
with,
I have in our rookie draft.
I know.
Yeah, this is an interesting spot. I mean, I have a guy that I want. I think but I'm choosing between 3 or 4 guys. I think ultimately.
Yeah, and I think maybe I'll go a little bit off course here if I'm just sticking kind of with what the heart wants. And I'm going to take Emeka Egbuka, first round pick. Love the player. The situation short term is not great. Mike Evans is there. Chris Godwin's there. Chris Godwin re-signed. We'll see if Mike Evans, if this ends up being his last year, but I think Egbuka will eventually be the Godwin replacement. And I think, what I like about Egbuka to this landing spot is he has the perfect personality to be a first round wide receiver and be the team's number 3 to start the role. He's the all-time leading receiver at Ohio State while never being the number 1. He's also a great golfer. I was kind of analyzing his swing and had mad respect for that. He's a 6 handicap right now, but there's some serious potential in that game. And I will say too, like, injuries do happen. I mean, there was a window in the middle of the season where Edwins, Godwin, and McMillan were all out, and Cade Otton was the number 1. So we're not forecasting any of that, but I'm just saying I think if you can afford to be patient, if you've got some good wide receivers on your team, I think the long-term value can pay dividends with him.
Yeah, and that's interesting. I have seen more and more people picking him at 8. That's not something I don't know. I struggle with a guy that in your first round pick that you're not going to be able to use right away. And I just think fair. That if you invest this pick, like in Dynasty League, most leagues have taxi squads. He feels like a taxi squad candidate for me. Somebody that, somebody you definitely want to own, but somebody that the first half of the year, you probably aren't even going to be looking to play whatsoever. I think in redraft leagues, he's going to be late buried in the, in the later rounds, down in 13, round 12, 13, talented player. Maybe somebody takes a shot on him in your leagues earlier than that, but without a role. And you didn't even mention McMillan. And so, I don't know. I thought this was an interesting pick for the Bucs because I was pretty excited about Egbuka as a prospect. If he had gone to Houston, it would have been all over him. It would be a tier.
He would be 8, in that right? Other tier.
Or if he had gone to Washington, it would have been a tier of 8, right? It's just the landing spot was a little bit interesting to me because there is the element of just these established players and an ascending second-year player at his same position. So, but if you go down to 9, I'm going to take Caleb Johnson. I think that I was a little disappointed by his draft capital. I really thought when the Broncos went trade down, that they were going to take Caleb Johnson and that he was going to kind of ascend to the top of the depth chart. And then when he fell, I thought that the Steelers' landing spot was about as good as it could have been, right? I mean, there were a couple other teams that maybe he could have gone to, but I think stepping into a vacated role is something that's pretty valuable. I think he's going to just play Najee Harris's role. And that was a very high volume player, a top 20 running back. And, if he is more explosive, more talented, I think that there's an opportunity here for him to step into a pretty major production profile as a rookie. So obviously Warren's there, and Warren is somebody that they were hyping up and saying that they could see as a workhorse back, but then they go out and get Johnson, who very much more profiles like that and could keep Warren in his change of pace role. So that's why I like Caleb Johnson. I do think in the process it was unfortunate because I thought he was going to be the third running back in this class, and then he kind of slipped all the way down to 6 or 7 in the draft. So I like the landing spot. I like the role. I like drafting guys too that are going to have a role as a runner for sure. And
Yeah.
drafting guys that don't necessarily have the clear role as a runner always makes me a little concerned. I mean, you could obviously be successful as a pass catcher, but when you don't have that up front, it just always makes me concerned that, like, is that going to come? When is that going to come? And somebody that absolutely proved me wrong that I was saying that about at this time when he got drafted was James Cook, right? And he just ascended into this awesome rusher. So, there's opportunities like that for a couple other guys that we're going to be picking down a little bit later. But Caleb Johnson's somebody
I like Caleb a lot. For 110, I am going to go with someone I actually considered at the 108. And I'm going to go with Matthew Golden here. I will say I was a little bit surprised that the Packers waited 23 years to draft a wide receiver in the first round, and this was the wide receiver that they took. I know I've kind of been a little bit hard on Golden, just didn't love his lack of production at Houston and kind of came on late at Texas. But I will say, like, there is the opportunity to be the Packers wide receiver one immediately with Watson injured. Dobbs and Wicks have kind of been underwhelming. Dobbs and Watson are free agents after this year. I think Reed is a really good slot player, but I think the problem with Reed is, like, he just doesn't get on the field a ton. Like, we look at his snap shares and it's like in the 50s, maybe it creeps up to the 70s. So I think for this one, I'm just going to trust the NFL scouts and the team and the quarterback and the draft capital with him.
Yeah, and obviously first round makes it a little bit easier to pick him, but I do know that you're not a huge fan of his, and I was gonna push you to pick him because I didn't want you to talk about him. And my thing on Golden is the production profile just never came around in college. So, it's like he was kind of good at the very end of his last year, but other than that, he kind of came out of nowhere. So, anyways, the speed is there, right? We'll see if the route running and the wiggle is there, but the first round element just makes it so the capital is there, and you can just trust that he's going to be around and on the field.
And that's honestly what pushes him up for me. It's not like the Packers are this team that always drafts first round wide receivers. Like, they must have seen something, right? Like,
yeah. I mean, I agree with that. They had to have, or they finally decided it was time, or they didn't think he was going to get there. Like, they had him as their number 2 receiver on the board, or number 3, I guess, after Hunter, if you include him. But they just decided, what, we're gonna go for it. We need speed in our offense. We need to set up Love with a better receiver and a better field stretcher. Something they didn't really have last year. Watson, when he was, not continuously hurt, but I like Golden quite a bit. I do wonder what the Packers are going to do with their wide receiver room. I kind of hope they clear out a couple of players out of the receiver room. That would make me feel a little better about Golden too. I think it's time to move on from Wicks and Watson personally with this pick, and roll, with Dobbs and Reed. But we'll see. I think they kind of still have those guys under rookie deals, so they're not just going to outright cut them. But Golden overall great player. Moving to 111, I'm going to take Tyler Warren. I think people watching are probably like, when are you going to take Warren? When are you going to take Warren? But I do think in a non-tight end premium league, it's a little bit tougher. And in 12-team leagues, I think he could go higher too. But we play in a 10-team league, and he'll go somewhere between that 9 to 12 range, I think. In our leagues as well. And I don't think you need to say a lot about him. He's going to Indy, which obviously isn't an ideal landing spot for pass catchers. They got so many wide receivers that are just kind of like iffy. But I will say, I think maybe adding a safety blanket that is able to find space in the offense and give Richardson some easy throws maybe is going to be very helpful, and could lead to him having a lot of catches, so if you're in full PPR, if you're in premium with 1.5 or 2 PPR, I could see a situation where Warren is super, super valuable to you and would go much higher than this.
Yeah, I get that. And I think something's got to give with the Colts. I mean, maybe it's Pierce moving on, maybe Pittman eventually, maybe it's Anthony Richardson becomes awesome. Maybe, they turn the corner next year. But I think just him as a talent with the draft capital and at the position, I think that makes a lot of sense. And then kind of what I touched on too with, positional, if you're team 11 and you got to the finals on the back of like George Kittle the last couple of years, like this makes even more sense. So on the other hand, if this was a McBride or Bowers team, like maybe not so much. But I guess rounding out the number 12 pick here, I'm gonna go with RJ Harvey. I liked RJ Harvey so much more when he was like a sleeper versus a potential first round
Versus
pick.
first round
Like,
pick.
I don't know. I mean, it's like he's 24 years old. Like, we talked about this. Is Estime going to get the goal line work? Like, all these different things. And it's Sean Payton. I know everyone wants to just say that Sean Payton's just going to ride his horse and this is going to be the golden era of running backs again for him. But I don't know. It just makes me a little nervous. I still think Peyton's a little bit weird where he might roll out a 3-headed monster the first few weeks and make us all kick and scream. But I don't know. I think they passed over some good running backs to take him. So they must really like him. And I think that, I don't know. It's just tough to ignore. What do you think about this one? I'm
The part I
hesitant.
can't get over on this one is that he's 24 years old. It's like, we're playing
Yeah.
fantasy football here, and like he could be good this year,
Yeah.
but like you look 3 years down the line, and if he's
Yeah.
26, he was a second round pick. Obviously, the draft capital's there, but like it's not like he's a horse either, right? It's not like if it was Caleb Johnson, I would be so in. But
Yes.
it's
Yes.
and Caleb Johnson's 21 and is like a workhorse back who could expand his passing game role, but this is not what this is, right? Harvey's a home run hitter who's a little bit undersized, and well, I shouldn't even say that because he's kind of similar size to Jeanty, but he feels a little bit undersized and he's older, and I don't know, just maybe I'll come around on that, but I feel so burned by Tyrone Tracy, and he was 24-year-old rookie, right? And it's just like I just am not going to be able to get that out of my head. I know he was a 5th-round pick, and Harvey's a 2nd-round pick, and it's a different circumstances, but that's the main thing I have not been able to reconcile with Harvey. So moving on to 13, which is the beginning of the 2nd round now, 2-1. I'm just going to go chalk. Not a lot to talk about here. Colston Loveland, 10th overall pick in a great offense with a great system, could step into that Laporta role in the Ben Johnson offense. Could be a big help to Caleb Johnson to have a more stable pass catcher, somebody that can create his own space, is a good route runner, can win down the field too, even, if he needs to. And the offense is pretty crowded. So, there is maybe a situation where he ends up with, 600-700 yards as a rookie, which would be pretty good, but he would need to score touchdowns to be fantasy relevant if he's going to do that, right? He'd have to get 6, 7, 8 touchdowns if he's going to be relevant in his rookie year. So again, this is something where if you already have a tight end, and you pick him, he's a taxi squad kind of candidate for me, right? Somebody that you want to keep, somebody that you can see expanding his role in a big way. And if he hits, and he's doing well through the first couple of weeks, you can always just activate him onto your team. If you have an established tight end, like McBride or Laporta or obviously Bowers, this is not a player that I think I'm necessarily looking to take outside of tight end premium leagues. It's just unfortunate where you're eventually going to have to put him on your bench, and having to own 2 good tight ends is something that I just always kind of hesitate at. Maybe he becomes a trade chip, but I don't think that comes around until the production matches. As starter, somebody that's better than a David Njoku, for example.
Yeah, and that's just too much risk for me. And I loved this pick before they turned around and chose my guy Luther Burden.
Why didn't they just take Caleb Johnson instead of Burden?
Well, the problem was I think
nice.
I think they were gonna go Henderson.
I
think that was
who they wanted.
That was the pick, and then he went right in front of him, and I think they just went best player available. But we'll talk about Burden too. But I think here, Jaden Higgins is a player that you and I have talked about a bunch. We really like. He doesn't drop the ball. He's tall. He's kind of faster than expected. Going to the Texans, obviously, it was funny when his name was called. The NFL Network had his player comp as Nico Collins. I see a little bit more of like a Drake London with him. Not super great yak, but big, tall outside receiver. And Tank Dell's gone. Obviously, Stephon Diggs is gone. So Nico's going to draw a lot of coverage away. I wouldn't necessarily forecast him to be like a high volume type guy, but I think he'll be a really solid, productive player.
Yeah, I need to spend some more time like watching and thinking about Higgins and Noel because they're teammates in college and they end up on the same team. And the draft capital isn't all that different, right? 2nd and 3rd round. And I kind of see Noel as the one who's going to be used more like Diggs was last year. Short area, close to the line of scrimmage, and potentially in the red zone. But obviously they have Nico that kind of plays the similar position to Higgins. So, if there's going to be volume at a different level of the field for somebody, I think Noel might be the better player this year for fantasy. But I just had to get that on record. I do really like Higgins. I just don't think Nico's going to go anywhere. So unless he can carve out a role on the opposite side of the field and be very productive down the field, I just worry that he's not going to really pull a lot of targets in this offense.
Real quick with Jalen Nolan, I'm sure we'll talk about him, is, a lot of scouts had these guys kind of back to back. I think Noel's projected to be a second round pick. And I wouldn't be surprised if we end up hearing that this was kind of, a Tank Dell situation where CJ Stroud was like, go get Noel as well to go alongside Higgins. So, really like that trio that they're going to be running out. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and their receiver room, talk about rebuilding it very quickly. I really like that they went out and just got after it in the second and the third round. They could have gone there in the first, but I think they wanted Ibuka. And once that wasn't on the table, they went in a different direction. So they traded out, right?
They did, out of the first round, yeah.
Yeah, they traded out. I kind of liked that element, right? And then they ended up rebuilding with the receivers that I thought was the best left, right? I mean, I really like Higgins. I truly think that was a good pick. I just, for a fantasy angle in this year, another guy that I'm just afraid that that's more of a taxi player for your rosters. Next guy down, I took Cam Ward, so I'm going to go back to the quarterback. Well, I'm going to take Jackson Dart. I think there's a possibility here for him to step into a starter role this year, right? If the Giants aren't good and you get to, week 10, week 11, depending on where their bye is when the schedule comes out, that might be a more natural transition towards the end of the year. I do think that he's got some skills, and they traded up into the first round to get him, specifically throwing the ball down the boundaries. So that's kind of what Russell Wilson's going to be doing, I think. And so Russ kind of having the downfield attack in place, and then Dart can kind of transition naturally, has a similar style of play. I don't know if it's necessarily a similar skill set, but I think that was maybe the idea behind signing Russ and then doing what they can to get Dart, then the offense kind of stays intact. So I'm not thrilled about this for Neighbors. Honestly, I'm a little worried that Dart's just not that good. And they might roll him out there this year, next year, and try and make him into a thing, but ultimately, if he's not that good, this is going to be kind of a wasted pick. And it is somebody, again, not to keep harping on this, because there are other guys that you wouldn't necessarily want to taxi, but another guy that if you draft is a good taxi candidate.
I wouldn't worry so much about Neighbors. I mean, he had horrible quarterback play last year. I think what the issue was with Neighbors is we all got a little bit too excited when they signed Jameis Winston, and just the thought of him taking over and just Neighbors being like the wide receiver one. But I love Dart. I was very excited to see him get picked in the first round, but we'll see what happens. And moving over to my pick, I'm going to have to pick another player that I don't really like, but I'm going to do it because he went to my team, and I'm going to draft Tre Harris here.
Oh, let's go. Another guy I wanted to see.
God.
Another guy I was intentionally letting
You're
fall.
Just baiting me into picking these guys that I
Tre Harris pick. Yeah.
That I don't like. It's funny. I was looking back, one of our early rookie mocks, we went off of a mock draft, and Tre Harris went to the Chargers. I wrote down he'd be an improvement over Quinton Johnston outside. I compared him last mock to a poor man's George Pickens, where he can box out well with his size and contested catches, but doesn't have the explosiveness or overall athleticism. Also has the same lack of concentration and dumb drops. And for the Chargers, if you're looking to move on from Quinton Johnston, it shouldn't be a guy who drops the ball. But I will say, now that he's on the team, I'm a big Tre Harris fan. So I don't know. Jokes aside, I will say, Josh Palmer's gone. Quinton Johnston sucks. Ladd's obviously a superstar, and they didn't end up taking one of the top two tight ends. So I think there's an opportunity for him to carve out a really good role. I think he's a player that has a very low floor. He obviously dealt with, a big time injury this year. He was leading the FBS in receiving yards for a while. And it's weird because usually I gravitate toward these wide receivers from tier 2 SEC schools, but for some reason, Tre Harris just never kind of spoke to me. But I don't know. What do you think about Tre?
Yeah, I liked Tre Harris, or I've always liked Tre Harris more than you. I mean,
everyone has.
I kind of thought that he was going to go in the first round when we initially started all of this. Back in February or, right after the Super Bowl. Tre Harris was somebody that I thought had a great prospect profile, right? He's big, he's got good speed. He's got solid hands. I know you said he dealt with drops. I mean, obviously the injury wasn't great, but the production is all there too, in a way it's not with Golden, right? So it's like, maybe the injury made him fall, maybe the speed made him fall a little bit.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I felt like when the Chargers got him, I was like, oh my God, if he doesn't struggle with drops, like this guy is going to be really good. And again, this is somebody too that can kind of naturally take over from Mike Williams and might have
Yeah.
been kind of one of the Chargers' targets in round 2. They probably wanted Loveland, and probably why they didn't go with a receiver like Golden in round 1. I know that was kind of mocked a lot, is they probably saw, look, we got Ladd. We don't really need another small receiver, or I shouldn't say
Yeah.
small, but another small, speedy receiver. We want a big outside receiver. We've been looking for that since Mike Williams left. We tried with Quinton Johnston. That didn't work out. And now we're bringing Mike Williams back, and we're going to try again with Trey Harris. So again, if he hits, I'm excited just because, Charger fan, I was like, oh, let's go. They went in on running back. They went in on receiver. They're trying to set up their offense to be successful. So Harris, full disclosure, Harris is who I would have actually taken at 11 if I wasn't trying to get you to pick him. So
Thanks.
that's
Thanks.
yeah, I do like Harris quite a bit in terms of somebody I don't think is a taxi player. That's somebody I think you leave on your bench and that could possibly slide into that flex spot as early as week 2 or 3, right? He can have one of those Allen Hurts type of games where he goes 102 touchdowns in week 2, and it's like, oh, wait a second, this guy's in the flex consideration. Going on to the 2-5, we've let this guy drop maybe a little bit too much, but the landing spot is just so rough. So I'm going to take Luther Burden here. He goes to the Bears, who drafted Loveland in the first round ahead of him, and then they already have Rome, first round pick from last year, and they've got their, kind of wide receiver 1, DJ Moore, still there. So, he'll slide into Keenan Allen's role in the offense, I guess, and he is shifty, should be able to get open middle of the field. So that is kind of a 1-for-1 replacement within the offense. But my fear with this pick specifically is that Ben Johnson likes to run 12 personnel. And if he's going to be running Kmet and Loveland out there, guess who's not going to be on the field, even if he is the third wide receiver in the offense? Burden. And that's going to be like, oh my God, we're in week 3. And it's like, dude, is Burden ever going to play more than 55% of the snaps? Like, he's getting 6 targets on 55% of the snaps. He's going 4 for 40 with, and he's got 2 touchdowns through 4 weeks, but he's just not playing. And it's like, I don't know. It just is such a bummer because I was the ideal landing spot for me was Tennessee, right? They're kind of trying to build up from the bottom. And if Tennessee had stuck and picked him in round 2, I just would have been really excited about that because then it's like possibly the number 1 wide receiver in terms of targets, and he's on the field 100% of the time, or as much as he can handle 85% of the time. So it's a landing spot here because I was really excited about Burden. I thought he was going to be an easy first round pick in these mocks, but unfortunately, I just don't see it yet. Maybe he should go earlier as a long term piece, right? Is that, look, you put him on your taxi squad this year, and then they move on from DJ Moore next year, and then it's Burden and Rome in this offense at receiver. I just don't know that that's going to happen. So, anyways, I'm just bummed because I really like his prospect.
It is interesting. Like if you're doing your rookie mocks or your rookie drafts right now, I could see him falling quite a bit. But if you're getting closer and deeper into the summer and doing him, like we might get more reports or beat reporters saying like, oh, he's going to be Ben Johnson's slot guy. Like, look at what that might do. Look at what Amon-Ra did. So I think his value can climb. But yeah, I was a little bit bummed with, the landing spot and eating into Loveland's workload. Next pick here, I'm going to go with a little bit of upside. I'm going to go with Kyle Williams, selected by the New England Patriots. I will say Diggs is 31. He's coming off a torn ACL. Like he should be the top target in the offense. Like hopefully he comes back fully healthy. Henderson obviously adds some much needed speed to this offense. I like Booty quite a bit. You do as well. We'll see what happens with Polk's development, but Drake Bay's number 2 is available for the taking, and he was the only wide receiver that he drafted, and no one on this team eclipsed 100 targets last year. Hunter Henry led the team with 97. So this one's a little bit of a projection, and maybe it falls flat. We saw what their second round wide receiver did last year for this team. So makes me a little bit nervous, but definitely some solid upside here.
Yeah, I like him too. He's fast as well. I don't know if you ever mentioned that, but I think I did say that Kayshon Bouttie's role was probably the most safe throughout the offseason. And that's kind of when I thought they were going to be taking Tet, or a big outside wide receiver. And then they end up drafting somebody that kind of fits the same mold as Booty. So maybe the idea is Diggs on the outside to Douglas in the slot. And then, Booty and Williams are going to end up kind of competing here. So I like the pick. I think it's a little bit rich for my blood in terms of upside. I think there's a couple other receivers here that I do like quite a bit more than him, that we're going to be picking over the next couple picks here. But the pick I'm going to go with here, and I think maybe you've been baiting me into this one a little bit because I'm so invested in Tyrone Tracy, is Cam Scatterbo.
Yes.
Was so bummed that this is the one that the Giants decided, or this is the running back that the Giants decided to take, because to me, that puts Tracy back into more of like a kind of scat back role instead of a featured back role, because he's going to get running down work and he is a solid pass catcher. So it's like, God, this is
he's a good pass catcher.
This guy kind of profiles as just a 3-down back. And, you got a 3-down back with a 3-down back that was like a 5th round pick. So they have similar draft capital, I think, too. If you want to take Cam Scatterbo earlier than this, like, I don't have a problem with that, because I think there's a legitimate chance that we come to week 1 and he's RB1 on the depth chart.
Yeah, I'm so happy you picked him. We'll be talking about him quite a bit, but he's going to run through a wall for Brian Dable.
Yeah, and he is somebody that we're going to have to watch so closely through training camp and through all the offseason stuff, because it's going to be like he's going to be a hinge point in this draft, because if he is going to be the number 1 running back in the offense, we saw Tracy take over and be so effective, and they're only going to be better this year. And so, I think there's a chance here that we have a mid-tier running back 2 in the making there.
Yeah. Next pick, I'm going to go with someone that we already talked about, Jalen Knoll joining the Houston Texans. Obviously, they brought in Christian Kirk, but they weren't, anticipating knowing exactly who they were going to get in this draft. Definitely a slot player, could take over that Diggs role. We talked about that a decent amount. Just love the player here.
Yeah, the next player that I'm going to take is Jack Besh, 2nd round pick, Raiders. We obviously are the Jacoby Myers podcast here at the channel. We love Jacoby Myers, but there's obviously plenty of room for a 3rd pass catcher in this offense that they just don't have. So they bring in Geno. He's shown that he can kind of stabilize an offense and even elevate it. He's going to throw for over 4,000 yards, and I think there's plenty of room for Besh to have a solid first season with the Raiders. And as somebody, again, that I really liked in the draft process, I had him as my wide receiver 7, I think. And I think excellent spot to pick. He goes down, in these rankings that they've had. I've picked him multiple times, or talked about him multiple times, because he's always there at the end of the 3rd. And that's not going to be the case.
All right, next pick, I'm going to go with a running back here. I'm going to go with Bashul Tutin from the Jaguars, a player that I really like and was a 4th round pick for the Jags. We know that they picked up Etienne's 5th year. Maybe he gets traded at some point, but I don't think he's going to be part of their plans long term. And Liam Cohen obviously runs a good run scheme. This is someone that he hand selected. I think the GM was saying this is someone that he was talking about when he was interviewing for the role. So I know Jacksonville really likes them. I know Bigsby had kind of that stretch in the middle of the year for like 2 weeks or something where he was kind of like the hot commodity, but I think he has a chance to get a lot of playing time, and with his speed, if they can get him used in the right way, is someone who can kind of be a flyer.
Yeah, I like to. Speed kills, man. You can never go wrong by taking a shot on somebody that's fast, right? And if they do end up turning over the keys to that part of the role and they're able to move on from Etienne, like I think that this is a player there that can hit home runs, and you could play a lot worse players than that if you're in a pinch, for sure. So I do like him. The guy I'm going to take with my last pick here is probably the most annoying draft pick. When I saw it, I don't think my eyes rolled harder than anybody else, and that was Jalen Royals.
Oh yeah.
I just was so frustrated. Okay, he was supposed to be a 3rd round pick, and then he just keeps falling, and he falls right into Kansas City's lap at the end of the 4th round, and I'm just like, dude, like that's a perfect Hollywood Brown replacement. Like, he is productive, he's big, he's fast, and I know he didn't play at a big time school, but I just feel like he's going to be able to earn targets. And that's kind of what Hollywood Brown does. He's able to earn targets all over the field, even though he's not necessarily a top flight receiver. But Royals is somebody that I'm going to be targeting heavily because I think he can be the third option in the offense, especially next year. And I kind of think, with Kelsey kind of edging his way out of the offense, that's kind of Rice's role now. You got the burner on the outside with Xavier Worthy, and I think Royals might just fit in perfectly in that third wide receiver spot. And there's no doubt that Mahomes can help elevate people's play. He can support 3 wide receivers if that's going to be their offense. And, I just was so bummed. I was just like, dude, this is somebody that I really like, somebody that I had ranked in my top 8 receivers. And it's just like, dude, how did he fall so far? I just don't get it.
I'm with you there, man. And I guess with my last pick, I'm going to stick with the theme of taking wide receivers that I don't like whatsoever. And I'm going to take Pat Bryant here for the Broncos. I did not expect him to be a 3rd round pick. I thought he was going to be a 4th or a 5th round pick, but I don't know. Sutton's 30. He's on the last year of his deal. Hopefully they extend him, but there's not really a clear number 2 wide receiver on this team. He cleaned up his drops this year, but he's not very fast. I don't know. I don't really like this guy, but I guess I can kind of see a path to it working out. I don't know if you've looked at Bryant much.
I mean, not a ton, but it is the opportunity, right? We were going to talk about whoever the Broncos drafted. I just, again, another place where I think Royals would have fit better. But I mean, they went with Harvey and then they went with Bryant, 2 guys that I personally wasn't as high on as they were clearly, but Bo Nix, the offense should be good. And so, if he turns out to be a good player, 3rd round receivers turn out all the time, guys that I didn't even know, before. So, he's got all the opportunity in the world and, somebody that I haven't scouted a ton. So I definitely have to go back and look into him more before I'd be comfortable picking him in the 2nd round, but not to say that that's a bad pick at all. I think he could be, very productive in an offense led by Bo Nix and Sean Payton. So if he's going to be the 2, that could be a very, very productive spot.
All right, man. Well, that was a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to our rookie draft. I know ours isn't for a couple months, but for those of you that have them, the upcoming weeks, best of luck.
All right. And with that, have a good one, everybody. See you in the next one.